Hello everyone, I'm back. Right, today is a beautiful Sunday morning and I'm doing this recording for chapter 9, okay, on data privacies. Right, I hope everyone is well. Right, to move on, let's do a quick recap on last week where we talked about in the previous chapter on data trend. Right, so where we touch on the reporting and data analysis. We also look at data warehouse and the various data lakes as well. Right, and we also saw the three characteristics of big data, as in there's a lot of data, the volume of data coming in is fast and furious, right? And how we basically can analyze some of this quick data, right? And data are not in a fixed form; they are come in various varieties of data form. So how we basically handle this huge volume of structure, semi-structures, as well as unstructured data. Not easy to handle some of them. We need to do various transformations and necessary cleansings of the data. So those are the things that we have been talking about. Right? And you will find that actually data lakes are gaining a lot of popularities, right? Because especially when we have a lot of internet data that's actually stored in a more semi-structured way, such as using XML or JSON format, right? So here we actually got a table that basically do a quick comparison between the data warehouse and the data lake, right? So as we just now mentioned, data lake is gaining much popularity, right? In terms that it's a quick way to store a lot of real data, both structure, semi-structured and unstructured raw data. So these data are all coming from everywhere, right? We are basically collecting data from social media, emails, uh, PDF files, other ways, right? So you can see data lakes more like a reservoir, right? Like a reservoir with all the inflows of data coming from various sources, right? So just now I already mentioned social media is very one big place that you can collect a lot of informations, right? And both of them are basically quite semi-structured as well as structured, unstructured data, like in the form of videos, images, audios. So how you basically manage all this unstructured data, but in a data lake, they basically collect all this data and form it into some kind of a data set, right? And you'll find that the difference between the data warehouse, okay, is where data warehouse tend to be more structured and they are already been processed, right? So they already got schema on when they were writing into the data their data warehouse. Whereas data lake, okay, when they comes in, they are all in a very raw form. Okay, they're all very in the raw form. It's only when you want to read it, then you kind of process it, right? So this the majority of the people using the data lake are basically the data scientists, right? Whereas the business professional are the one who actually uses more of the data warehouse where information are very much processed, processed, right? So data scientists will basically try to dig more of those raw material, and that require a lot of works to be done. Right, so what we'll cover today is basically going through how are we going to protect the data throughout its whole life cycle, right? So the life cycle, we actually kind of touch it at the beginning of the chapters, right? That is where this is the 8 life cycles, right? From the point where we start to plan what to collect, right? And then going to the all the way until you try to store them. So throughout this life cycle, right, you have to find ways to ensure that data are not being compromised, are not being altered, right? Hopefully, because and you also want to ensure that the data are actually correct. So these are the data life cycle and how we should try to ensure data protection throughout all this uh, life cycle, right? Throughout its whole life cycle. So I think we all seen it that when we plan, okay, when we control right at the beginning, when we want to handle some of this data, we need to find a way to manage, right, and make sure that it's still accessible. Okay, protecting the data is also not just protecting it from authorized people, also making it accessible when people need it, right? So if when people need the data but you can't get it, that is also not protecting the data, right? Either the data is not is corrupted, right, where people cannot retrieve the data, or when the data is not ready. So you got to plan all this, make sure all these are well and done. Then collecting is basically about acquiring, okay, from the various sources, and how you can place it in a digital form where it's easily accessible. And collecting data, like I say, can be coming from various various formats, right? From various hardware or software. Okay, so you have to find means, okay, to be able to interface with some of these data generated equipments. Okay, and when we come to assure, so how do we ensure that the data we collected are of certain format, standard format that we can is readable, and we also have to assure that the data collected must be correct. Okay, the quality of data must be checked and inspect. Right, like I say, garbage in, garbage out. So you have to ensure that the data must be valid at least. Then in we also have to make sure that the data stored in the data centers are well protected, encrypted, right? Only authorized people can see it. So we are talking about long-term kind of archiving, okay, those data, and also be able to describe some of this data properly in the metadata, right? So we also have to ensure that even when we store them, we must have a way to make it searchable, right? No point you collect, or like just like you put libraries, right? You put in the libraries all the library book, right? But you didn't arrange it properly. Then if somebody want to find a specific book, they couldn't find it. So so that is meaningless, right? So as you kept certain thing, as you collect certain thing, right, especially data, you also must make it that you must try to index it properly so that it become searchable, discoverable, and subsequently it can be a useful data for everyone. Right. Then you also need to transform, integrate that into various format or standard format that basically people can locate it and also be able to obtain it. Okay, so the other points, of course, when we come to analyzing, so you must be able to ensure that you have various models and be able to apply the right analytical models, right, to the data so that meaningful predictions, right, can be made, right? So that could also be talking about how you can integrate, okay, the various data into one homogeneous data set so that it can be readily acquired or analyzed. So that's where we see that the data itself has a whole life cycle, and it's very important that we know how to protect this data throughout its whole lifespan, right? So both in keeping the data private and also uh, ensuring that the data is secure, right? So that people will not change it, alter it, and when you need it, it's also available. So this is a part and parcel of data privacy and also security, right? That we have to ensure. So so why is it increasing concern, especially in this digital age, right? Because digital data is now actually readily available, and which means people can transfer data easily, right? People can copy, people can acquire, people can pass around easily, right, as a digital mean. So that's why it's increasing. It's so convenient and easy, right, to give away your information. So that's the more that we need to find ways to ensure such data does not spread around undiscriminately, right? So anybody get hold of this can just simply use it. Uh, so we see a lot in this recent year in terms of spamming of the email, spamming of your handphone. You receive even messages like this, right? This is something like uh, loan. Okay, so it's like mainly used by the marketers, right? So they basically spam you with some of this information or marketing information which is not needed by you. So they didn't do a target kind of a customer marketing. So all the more now is the government is also coming hard on how organization handle the data, right? That's why they introduced these protections, personal protection data act, okay, or personal data protection act, right? Whichever, right? Uh, so this is very important, right? Because a lot of times we make payment in the digital form using our digital credential. So people can actually use some of your digital credential and then they could make unlawful transactions. So we need to be protected against some of this this kind of criminal act. So what is a Personal Data Protection Act? It's the rules that govern the collections, not only just use, but also the way you collect this data and use it or even disclose, right? So we have to make sure that we, even if we have those personal data, right? So we have to be careful on how we use it, right? Just an example, right? We have a lot of students' data. We have got your date of birth, address, NRICs, right? But we have to be careful on how we manage this data, right? Even in simple things like emailing, right? That like for example, when we want to broadcast announcement, okay, we actually try to use BCC as much as possible, right? Why do you use BCC? Instead of CC, because other people, other students might get hold of the whole class attendance list, right? So we're also not sure that maybe within some of our students, they could be insurance agent, they could be other property agents. That I'm not saying everyone, the property agents or insurance agents are bad, but some of them might use some of this data and then they might the classmates' informations like email, right? Because I used to send it out and then they can conveniently copy the whole uh, class email list and then use it for their own purposes or marketing purposes, right? So we have to sometimes be careful, right, about sending out some of these email or even announcements, right? So very important to take note is basically uh, the personal data usage, right, from collecting, from using, and also disclosing to other, transferring to others, right, is well protected. And we need to ensure that you have to do these three tasks: collect, use, and disclose. Okay, carefully. So in fact, you all can visit the this. That's why Singapore have this DNC, which is actually do not call registry, where it actually allow public to register your telephone number with them, so that you can, once you're registered with them, you're basically classified as a don't disturb kind of a list, right? So if you visit the website, I think I have got the website. Let me just switch over to the website. Yes. So this is a Personal Data Protection Commissions, right? So you can actually register your home number, your telephone number, right? Even for home address, okay, register over here, right? So that when organizations who want to use your informations or your handphone for telemarketing, they have to go and check on the list that's been registered here. And if your handphone number is registered, right, in this registry, they are not supposed to use it, right? Because you have already registered yourself as do not spam me, right? Do not spam me unnecessary, right? So, or maybe you have indicated that you do not wish to receive some of this marketing informations, right? So some of us will find it very a nuisance to receive once in a while some of these telemarketers, right? So you can actually go to this register through either using a SMS, handphone, or going online. So there are a few modes where you can actually register do not call, uh, kind of this. Okay, so um, so of course, this is formed by government. So government has some authorities over this, how the organizations will function in this part of the world, right? So the PDPA is will take into consent that you need to, if you need to collect or use, you must get the individual's knowledge, right, and consensus agreement to use it, and you must also indicate what is the purpose, and you will try to use it in a responsible way, right, under good circumstances and with the knowledge of the individuals, right? So you need to take considerable care about the personal data, which is you also, we will talk about that in how you ensuring that the data that is kept by you is well protected, right? So the Personal Data Protection Act, later you'll see that it cover both not just electronic form but also non-electronic form, right? Maybe non-electronic form could be your NRIC, your passport, right? That the physical passport that you might need, or even photocopy of your NRIC. Right? Sometimes people can actually borrow money, but just simply having a photocopy of your NRIC, right? So that could also be a non-electronic form. They can use that photocopy and then use it to apply a loan or apply some other subscriptions, right? So as a company, you need to take note of all this, right? Especially you want to use to disseminate informations or do telemarketing. So there are a lot of other things that is being mentioned over here. So uh, these are all pretty important. I thought I saw something about the business. So businesses, you have to ensure that you handle it well within the act, right? So these are stated somewhere. I couldn't find the thing. No. Okay. So anyway, you can go to this place, PDPC, right? .government.sg to find out more. The link is here. So how does PDPA works, right? So it's compliance to a lot of sectors, right? Even there is the Monetary Authorities of Singapore, right? The Banking Act, Insurance Act, all these all come under have to comply, right, with this framework, okay, which is this framework, because these are the people who use extensive of they need to collect some of these personal data, right, for some of the business transactions they need to transact. So consent is very important. So before you can collect, okay, before you can ask for information, ask for personal data like date of birth, right? Especially like when you buy insurance, they will need to know your date of birth, your age, right? Of course, the younger you are, the less premium you need to pay. The older you are, you have to pay a higher premium. So it's part of their calculations and they need those data. So you have to make sure that when you collect data, you only collect the right data or enough data. Don't collect extra, right? And if you need to collect extra, then you have to get some consensus. Like for example, you might need to collect more of the health data, right? Especially you buy insurance, life insurance, health insurance, they need to know whether you have any diseases before or currently do you have undergoing any medication, etc. So they might need to know some of the even personal accidents that happened before, right? Like if you injured your leg or broken any bones before, so that can have an impact on again the premium or the insurance or the coverage that can offer. So this could be part of the important information that is required right? And under the Insurance Act, they might be allowed to collect some of this information, personal information, right? So, whichever the case, just make sure that the individuals agreed consents allow you to collect and even use, right? Or even subsequently uh, disclose to others, right? Because sometimes any medical information they might want to disclose to the hospital to get some verification. Like for example, you might have, let's say example, that you could have some chronic diseases, right? They might need to verify, or sometimes they might need to do a check, right? Even if you have disclosed everything, they might also need to disclose some of your personal data just to check on the health care data, and then see whether some of the things that you disclose has been extensive enough, or have you forgotten some of the things. So they might need to verify against the hospital information, and in the midst of checking with the hospital, they might need to disclose your IC number, your name, okay, so that they can attain some of these informations. Of course, again, this has to be prior to your knowledge, right? Consensus. So you must also highlight what is the purpose for, right? Like just now, it's for medical verification, to check that you only have a small heart disease, or any other things that could be also relevant for their insurance, okay, collections, right? and and or if they were to use, they have to make sure that it's of a appropriate manner, like just now I already mentioned also, right? So more for verification, or even to just to ensure that all the medical history are all complete, right? So for completeness, okay, of the work, even banking, right? The bankings might also need to check against, do some some checking of your personal or financial background, right, to verify that you have not borrowed too much, or have you been also, because sometimes when people want to borrow, take loan from the bank, but they didn't disclose that they still have some car loans, right? So so some of these banks, right, they might also want to check whether have you exceeded the loan limit, right? Because you might have forgotten about declaring that you have a car loan, right? So some banks might want to check with other banks, do you have any other loans, housing loan, personal loans, educational loans, right? That before they can grant you further loan, okay, to borrow more monies, right? So this could be some reasonable, appropriate manner, right? In the line of when they want to verify your personal financial liability. So just now we mentioned, right, PDPA, they do not just cover only electronic digitized informations, but also the usage of how photocopied, right, or even the actual documents like IC, passport. Sometimes you pass the physical passport to someone, right? So you must make sure that they don't use your personal passport for something else. Like for example, when you go for a tour, right? Usually when you go for a tour, sometimes the tour agency will need to collect your physical passport, right? So for booking of hotel, for booking of overseas uh places of interest, or to buy tickets, right? So they might need to hold some of your physical passport. So here also ensure that the agency, right, like the tour agency, they don't use your physical personal data, okay, for something else, right? So that also apply. So there are also something like also your name cards, right? For example, right? So that sometimes we use our name card freely, right? For business contact informations, like if we visit some of the exhibitions, right? Or business exhibitions, or even during business meeting, right? We exchange card rather liberally, right? So we also have to ensure that those business card, you don't just anyhow use it undiscriminately. So there are 9 Personal Data Protection Act obligations, from all the way from consent, purpose, notification, how you want to get notified or you need to be notified, right? Access control, right? And also to check whether the correctness of your personal data, the accuracy, right? And how long you can retain some of your personal data, and how you can disclose or even transfer some of your personal data to another organization, and basically also covering the openness. Anyway, we'll go through the details of each of them. We'll see with some examples, illustrations, right, to help you to understand more. Like for example, the first one, consent. Right, organization. I already keep saying, right, organization. If you need to use some of the data, your personal or customer data, you have to get consensus from the owners, right? In both in terms of writing or etc. Right. So uh, example, if you subscribe to a telco company, right? Like for example, as Singtel or M1, when you subscribe to some of their services, they might ask you, right, with your consent that they need to collect your address, right, your NRIC, so verifications, or even for address so that they can later on, or email address so that later on they can actually send you bill, right? So you need to get if you are agreeable, then they will be able to use your information such as your email address to basically send you billing information subsequently. So consensus is important. Okay. uh, and how you use it also limited by the purpose. Okay, so you don't use it for any other reasons, right? So if your your collections of data of email is just for billing purposes, then you can use it for that, right? And that is under considered as under appropriate circumstances, right? Or when your data plan exceed, right, certain limit, they might even SMS you or even contact you, alert you that you have actually use, okay, exit, and there will be or even extra charges, right? Especially when you go to other countries, right? Where your data roaming might be activated, right? So they might also need to send some notifications. So some of these purposes, right, where they gather your personal data is actually of legitimate use, right? So they can actually provide, they can actually use it, right? Sometimes they also use it for some little promotions or good deals, right? That you might be might need to be aware. So these are sometimes considered as appropriate reason, right? So, but you just have to limit only for such purposes, and not like you're going to sell your data to another marketing departments, right? Or marketing organizations, right? Or some third party. So ensure the ways that your your usage, okay, is under appropriate circumstances, right? And it should be applicable to within your own organizations. So notifications is just now what I, as long as the notifications as a form of a good notification that is appropriate, right? So here also gave the example of Sarah signing up for membership in the gym, right? So when you sign up for membership in the gym, sometimes address is required. So you need to give the address so that maybe the organization can send you a gym membership card, which might not be available for collection at the initial state, right? So they might need to have your address. So that also be appropriate ways to collect information, and also to ensure there are subsequent notification, like maybe your membership expire, so they need to basically alert you about uh, some of these things or some of these payments, right, that is due. Right, the other obligations is of course be able to permit the organizations to correct some of your data, or even if you as an individual can also request the organization to check whether their data is correct or not, and be able to update, right? For example, some of you also call up and say, hey, I think my handphones have changed, right? So could you verify or check whether the system, right, in the school uh, SMS or system is actually being updated, right? So you can also request that the organization update, okay, and correct some of your personal data, right, accessible. And you can also make a request that you want to have the organization to report uh, some of your data usage, your personal data usage, right, for the past 1 year, right? So for the past 1 year, how have you been using my personal data? Have you been using it for not just more than just notifications of announcements or payments or billing inquiries, etc. So organizations are also obliged, right, to give at least past 1 years of records of how you have been using some of your this personal data. So you organization need to disclose accuracies, right? So uh, organization is also obliged to ensure that at least your personal data are correct and complete, right? So organization must make sure with reasonable efforts to ensure that this data, okay, are regularly being checked by you, right? So sometimes even like Google email, sometimes you will see some pop up and then ask you to verify whether your handphones is correct, right? So, or your secondary email address is correct. So these are again some obligation done by the organizations, right, to ensure that after half a year, after 1 year, or even after 5 years, right, can you please check whether your personal data are correct? Especially some of us, when we change house, we forgot to sometimes it's we forgot to notify the organization. It could be a banking, right? That we have been transacting over the internet all the time, but we forgot to update the address. So sometimes the bank would simply just check, right, after a reasonable amount of period, like especially 5 years, right? That could be a long time, and sometimes your the system or the company organization data is still having your old address, right? So that could also uh, alert you that maybe you have forgotten, right, or you have overseen oversight in terms of updating the organization with a right handphone number or right address, or maybe your status. Right? Previously you were single, then after that you got married, but again you forgot to update. Okay, so these are important things that sometimes the organization just have to alert or notify, okay, check with the user, the customer, that can you please check the personal data again, right? Even our organization like NYP, sometimes the HR will regularly send out, right, to check that have we have any address change, or have we got any extra kids, right? Sometimes we got extra kids and we forgot to update the organizations as well. So here are some examples. This is on the accuracies also, especially medical, right? Medical. So sometimes even our organizations, right, when we start work, we got a complete health check, right? But after being with the company's organization for 10 years, right? So the organization sometimes would ask you again, right, to have either to let you go for a full medical checkup again, or they might even ask you to declare some of your health records, okay, or health signals that you have. So this is also to ensure that the companies has up to date information, personal information about you, right? So this is one scenario. Protections, okay. So under the obligations, okay, for data protection, organizations also have to make sure that they do their due diligence in protecting the data, right? To ensure that the data that they have is only handled by the people who needs them, uh, and these people are actually reliable, and well trained, and they will have to ensure that when they use the information, they don't use it anyhow, okay, and there are appropriate level of security put in place, such as encrypting the data, right? And also ensuring only data with certain access right can access. Who can read, who can read and also update, who can also delete, right? So you might have different access level, right? So only certain people can delete the record, only certain people can update the record, but maybe the rest of people they can read, but they cannot do any updates. Huh? So, appropriate access control has mechanism has to be put in place. Okay, and you should have a safety officer or a security officer to ensure all these are being checked. Okay, the standard SOP, right, should be observed at all time. Right, so in the events that information is being breached, right, or security information is being hacked into, or security information has been exposed, you must promptly can notify the victim, right? Promptly announce it also. That's why the Singapore Health Act, right, when their security is being compromised, right, they have to quickly let the relevant person know so that he can take precautions, right? Just like in your credit card, for example, the banking sector, right? If their credit card is been credit card number of their customers, okay, is being exposed, somebody steal it, they must quickly either blacklist all this credit card, okay, or even alert their customers, right, that their credit card has been compromised, and they should take reasonable effort to check there's any extra charges that have taken place during the period where their credit card information is being used, right? So they have to promptly notify. So this is also part of the obligations as an organization to protect their customer information, right? So you must promptly notify and effectively try to protect this customer or even waive some of these charges. Okay, so technical measures, there's a lot of things that you can do to protect, right? So you have to make sure that you have the appropriate firewalls, okay, appropriate security mechanism put in place, both physical, means you have a security guard, the server machine can only be accessed by what contactless card or authorized person with the right PIN number, right? So these are various mechanisms that you can put in place to protect data server, right, and data equipments, right? And you have to make appropriate access control to ensure that you have a proper authentication mechanism in place, right? So maybe you need to implement second factors authentication, not just one factor, but two access control, two authentication mechanism to ensure appropriate data protections, right? So so you have to train your personnel, okay? Train the people who are going to use this data. Train that they don't anyhow disclose, right? So some of the attack could come through social engineering attack, where you have the somebody befriend some of your data administrator, somebody to befriend your personal secretary and try to use your personal secretary to sieve out some confidential email, confidential contract, confidential pricing list, right? So you have to make sure that these people who handle confidential documents, they are well trained and they know how to handle, uh, keep the data secret, okay, and not just anyhow disclose them. So so you have to ensure that you also have to ensure that the server, the OS, the networks are all up to date and they are regularly being maintained. The OS patches are up to date, so that they are not vulnerable to any of this attack. Okay, cyber attack especially. Right. Next, we move on to how long can you retain these informations, right? So how long can you retain? If the employee is no longer with the organizations or he's left the company, should you still retain his personal information. So that is something that is debatable, right? So by right, if the employee is no longer with the organization, maybe you should delete all their records, right? At least their email address, right? So this leads to how you want to protect, like even some of the private tuition centers, right? If the students is no longer with them, so should they still retain their records, right? Now, of course, there are some other circumstances that they have good reason to retain, like for example, NYP, right? When our students graduate after 3 years, we still retain their personal data, email address, their public, I mean their public email address, their handphones, their address. Okay, this is also for valid reason, because for alumni networking to be able to maintain old boys, old girls kind of relationship. So we have a reason to retain some of these data records, right? So if you have a good reason, then of course uh, you can put in place. Maybe you can retain it for 10 years, 20 years. If that's a good reason. But maybe for private tuition center, maybe you might not be able to keep that long, right? Or even employees, okay, ex-employees. So can you still continue to keep some of this, even like health data, right? So a lot of us, when we join any organization, a lot of our sensitive personal data, like our loan, or even our health data, our allergies, right? Sometimes we disclose it to the organization because they need them to. They need your health information to know that you got any uh, you have any bad illness or not, right? Before they can employ you, right? Obviously, most organization will want to employ people with no chronic disease, no heart problem, right? Because you are healthy, right? If you have some of these health problems, right, that might implicate the organization, because when you join the company, they might be they might need to acquire higher insurance premium for you, or they might uh, need to uh, need to be liable for some of your medical expenses later on. Okay, so some organization, they want, that's why they do they need a health check. Okay, they need to have a full screening of your health before they employ you. So that's where the health data. So how long can you keep those, right? Especially when employees are no longer with you. Okay, and transfer of data, right? So there's also a limitation on how you want to transfer the data, right? Especially across countries, right? This is especially so when you book hotels, right? When you go to a tour agency and the tour agency need your passport, right? To do some hotel reservation or do some theme park reservations for the ticketing, right? So maybe these are good reasons, right? But they are limited to that. Okay, only for hotel reservation, for theme park ticketing, or some other museum ticketing where they require your passport, right? Information to be given to them, but they should not be using your passport information to book some other businesses like spas, give it to the spa, give it to the other tour agency overboard, right? Where they might use it a lot more on some of these target marketing, right? So there's a limitations, okay, to how much or how far they can actually transfer your data, okay. So every time they do some of this transfer of data, of course, again back to consensus, right? They can, if they need to pass on to some of the things like spa information, your passport or your personal details to your spa overseas, right? Then they need to get consensus from you. So if you are agreeable, then okay, they can go on some of this booking. Right. Almost done. I think the openness, right? So, how open this informations, okay, how we want to protect this, we have to be very open, and we have to be okay, be take due diligence in deciding how to let people know this data, right? So, for example, there could be police, okay, police who want to to get some data from your organization, right? Because there's some criminal act, right? So they might need to access to some of this, and you might have to make the organization have to make some of your personal details to the authorities, to the government, to the countries, to the police, right? So they need to ensure, like for example, sometimes the government also asks Singtel or telco company or even the iPhone companies, okay, like Apple, say that, oh, we need to access some of this information. Can you provide some of this customer information, right? So this could also be part of the obligation that your organization have to uh, release some of your customer data because of some criminal investigation or some legal issues, right? That need to be obliged by the country's regulations, right? So the country regulator sometimes they're authorized, right, to assess, right, based on some complaint or some policies that they need to, or country security policies that they need to assess some of these informations, right? And some organization has the obligation to release it, right? So like just now I mentioned, right? Some due to some countries' security policies, right? They need to have access to some of these Singtel or telcos, some kind of communications, okay, or SMS information or WhatsApp informations, right? The messages that's been passing out. So they have to be obliged to open out some of this data. Right. So what happens if you don't comply with this personal PDPA Act? Of course, there's a fine. Okay, so the fine can amount to at least not more than $10,000, right? Uh, or you can be not allowed to use some of this data anymore, right? So before using any of this telemarketing, right? So organizations have to make sure that they check with the DNS, right? Just now we have saw the DNC registries. They have to check do not disturb or do not call, right? So registry. So before, okay, they can do any marketing. So if the handphone is being registered, then you cannot do any targeting marketing, telemarketing with them, right? And when you send informations to some of these people, you also must make sure that you identify which organization you are in, and also you have to make sure that your caller ID is also not being hidden, right? So you want to use people's information, handphone number, you also must make sure that the senders or the person or the message that's coming from must be identifiable, right, to the person who receive it. So that's what it means over here, right? So organizations must be obliged, okay, to provide enough data protections, and they also must right. So if they are being compromised, okay, if they have find any problems, okay, they might be ordered to stop collecting, okay, or using this information or disclose this information, right? So if you have found the organization, you found that they are not complying, they might be ordered to stop all these collections or even to destroy the personal data, and they are being stopped from further usage, right? So sometimes you might be found, okay, more than about up to $1 million of fine. So that's something that is a pretty large amount of fine. Right, the last slide I think. So what are these are some reflection questions. What are the good security practices recommended by PDPA on personal data protections, right, for an organizations? So this can be actually found in slide number 18, right? So some of the security protection recommendations, which is here, right? So this is a good practice for the organization is to ensure that they have got all the uh, person, okay, responsible for ensuring the information security well trained, and they must be held responsible. They must be well educated. They must have appropriate level of security that been put in place, both policies as well as SOP, right? So that everybody know how this information, okay, must be protected. So for example, if they open up the system to see the personal information, maybe after three minutes, right, they should close it, right? Or they have to ensure that they close, okay, close the documents and not just leaving the documents open up, right? Where people from behind, from any time, unauthorized people might also have a oversight on some of these sensitive documents. So, and also you have to make sure that in the events of security breaches, they must be notified immediately. They must actually notify the customer or make it or announce it, right? So that other people are aware. So these are some of the appropriate actions they need to do. What are the tasks to be done before an organization send out of the marketing informations, right, to Singapore telephone numbers, right? So this one just now we touched on slide 23. This is where we mention that when you need to do telemarketing, you need to broadcast anything, you need to use somebody's collected telephone number. Make sure you check with the DNC registry that the number is not in there, right? And you also make sure that the sender informations must be clear. Who is this message coming from? Your organization contact number must be also available. Okay, for people, you should not conceal or hide your telephone number. Okay, so these are again some of the suggested answers. Right. So I think that's all I have for you in this chapter. Thank you for your attention. Thank you very much. So I will end here.